Boom, boom, boom. I bet you will be delicious. Hello, welcome. Welcome, the old doomsday bunker. For when China does come. And they will. I remember saying in a video like a couple years ago, 2-3 years ago, maybe even 4, how China's building a battleship a month. I was watching some videos today that are just straight up scary. China right now has the largest navy in the world. They are no longer just a coastal navy, as they would call it. Like most countries aren't able to hit the ocean, like only a handful of countries. But right now, and I say in the past 15 years, China went from like nothing to the biggest navy in the world. And they're not stopping. That's not even the scary thing. It's all scary. It's all scary. These missile silos, they're scary.
Have you seen Donald Trump? Do you think he should step in? Donald Trump don't trust China. China is asshole.
Oh, that's so funny.
One vulnerability destroyed an empire. But imagine if the rebels didn't know which one to target. SCA tools should...
So, they're saying China's building 100.
China has begun construction of what seems to be more than 100 new silos for intercontinental ballistic missiles, or ICBMs. The site is in a desert near the southwestern city of Yumen.
Here's the thing. It's not just one site. There's over 100 of these sites with all these
satellite images
missiles
obtained by researchers at the James Martin Center for Non-Proliferation Studies in Monterey, California, show work is progressing at several sites in China's Gansu province. As per the pictures, there are 119 nearly identical construction sites, and these sites have features that are identical to existing launch facilities for China's arsenal of nuclear-tipped ballistic missiles.
Look how fucking big.
This seems to be a major upgrade of Beijing's nuclear capability. In this video, Defense Update analyzes why China seems poised to greatly expand its nuclear arsenal.
There's a Russian one.
Let's get into the details. This video is sponsored by War Thunder. If you are for an Xbox One with cross-platform air and its 60 days of... As identified from the photos, the construction sites are arranged in 2 huge swaths. Each site is separated from the other by about 2 miles, or 3.2 kilometers. Many of the sites are concealed by a large dome-like strip, which is similar to what's observed at known construction sites for missile silos in other parts of China. At sites where the dome is not in place, construction crews can be seen excavating a circular-shaped cavity characteristic of a missile silo. Another construction site appears to be a partially built control center. The People's Republic of China has developed and possesses weapons of mass destruction, including chemical and nuclear weapons. The first of China's nuclear weapons tests took place in 1964, and its first hydrogen bomb test occurred in 1967. Tests continued until 1996, when China signed the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, CTB. The number of nuclear warheads in China's arsenal is a state secret. There are varying estimates of the size of China's stockpile, ranging from 260 to 320. This is around 20 times less than what the U.S. and Russia possess. Early in 2011, China published a defense white paper which repeated its nuclear policies of maintaining a minimum deterrent with a no first use pledge. But the latest discovery puts question marks on the veracity of these policies. The nuclear deterrence of a country depends on the nuclear triad. A nuclear triad is the capability to launch nukes from land, air, and sea, and consists of land-launched nuclear missiles, strategic aircraft with nuclear bombs or missiles, and nuclear missile-armed submarines. China is one of the few countries, along with the US, Russia, India, and probably Israel, to have an operational nuclear triad at present. Chinese nuclear triad includes land-based ICBMs like DF-41 deployed from silos and mobile launchers, aircraft carrying free-fall nuclear bombs like Jian H-6s, and ballistic missile submarines like Type 92 and Type 94, which are armed with JL-1 and JL-2 SLBM, submarine-launched ballistic missiles. Each of the three delivery options has their own pros and cons. Land-based ICBMs are relatively cheap, but could be taken out with preemptive strikes, especially the silo-based ones, as they're at a fixed location. Bombers carrying nukes are flexible, but are slow and vulnerable. Ballistic missile submarines armed with SLBM are least vulnerable, but very costly to build, operate, and maintain. Most of the Chinese
Speculated all day long, but it could even be fake. They could be fake sites just to draw weapons there in the middle of their desert. That'd be the first thing on the list. If something broke out, those sites would be probably the first targets we go after, or anybody else. So to fake them, they don't mention that. China loves to fake stuff. China fakes everything to make it look for looks. They fake. It's the weirdest thing. They fake so much weird stuff.
These nukes are currently deployed in land-based ICBMs. This is a stark contrast to how the U.S. operates. The 14 ballistic missile submarines of Ohio class together carry approximately 50% of the total U.S. active inventory of strategic thermonuclear warheads. The construction of new silos indicates that China will continue to traverse the same path, focusing on the land-based option. The actual number of new missiles intended for those silos is unknown. 119 silos can accommodate 119 DF-41 ICBMs, each of which can carry 10 to 12 warheads. So this could see a potential increase of 1,000 plus nukes in the Chinese stockpile. This will certainly be a cause of worry for the US and neighbors like India and Japan. But there could be a more plausible explanation. China might be using a strategy that the US employed during the Cold War, shuffling a fairly small number of ICBMs among a large number of silos. This mitigates the major issue with land-based ICBMs. The enemy will find it very difficult to know where the actual missiles are being deployed, and make it hard, if not impossible, for the enemy to use a preemptive strike to destroy all the ICBMs. Chinese strategists would be planning to shift a small portion of land-based arsenal from one set of silos to another at regular intervals to prevent detection and maintain ambiguity. The most likely case is the middle path, which is a mix of both these scenarios. While this will not see a 1,000 plus increase in nukes, but could potentially result in the doubling of warheads. Beijing has resisted calls to join new arms control talks. This discovery follows recent warnings by Pentagon officials about rapid progress of China's nuclear capability. Admiral Charles Richard, who commands U.S. nuclear forces, said at a congressional hearing in April that a breathtaking expansion was underway in China, including an expanding arsenal of ICBMs and new mobile missile launchers that can be easily hidden from satellites. It's also noted that the Chinese Navy has introduced new nuclear weapons-capable submarines to its ever-increasing fleet. The continuous stream of intelligence and latest imagery revelation points to China's growing ambition.
What if feeding your dog fresh whole foods was easy? At Sundays for Dogs, we start with all natural, human-grade ingredients. Then we air dry the food into shelf-stable pieces. Frozen dog food is a costly hassle, but
That's pretty frightening. Their Navy. The thing about their Navy too, they when they build merchant ships, they build them to like a military spec. Everything's got heavy duty. Like, you know, their ferries. The decks on the ferries are built heavy enough for tanks and stuff, not just cars and trucks, but they're built, you know, to take military equipment. And all their commercial ships are built like that to be used in a military capacity. On top of them having a real ungodly huge Navy right now and growing.
Welcome to the Proceedings Podcast. I'm Bill Hamlet, the issue of our Ethical Marine Corps Prize winner. Round. So until last August, to welcome you and your audience again. It was great to catch up. Thankfully, 15 years about the rapid buildup of Chinese naval power and to call out China's illegal and irresponsible behavior at sea, starting more than 15 years ago. Jim, it's great to have you back on the show.
Bill, it's really an honor to be able to talk to you and your audience again. It's great to catch up. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, and thanks again. This is the third year in a row, so in May this year Proceedings, we've done another update, an outstanding update for us on the state of the PLA Navy. It's called Growing and Going to Sea this year, so more growth in the PLA Navy that continues at a rapid pace. And you've got some slides, as you did last year, for us. You've got some slides in the presentation. So you're like the best guest we have, because I sort of turn it over to you. You give the presentation, we do some Q&A at the end. So take it away, Jim.
Sure. Thanks. Well, I'll start off with the first slide here. A little bit different than last year. Right after we had our conversation, the Chinese Global Times came up with this sort of picture on the left-hand side of the screen. China, not even a bit can be left behind. And what you see is the outline of the shape of China in gold. And then you see all these little gold dots, which are the islands and the atolls and things that they believe are theirs. And the 9-dash line, the 9 lines are now 10 lines. You'll see there's a 10th one on the east side of Taiwan, and essentially it's kind of a real statement in the wake of the speaker's visit and the big exercise that they had in August of that year. So it just kind of gives you a sense of the totality of China's approach to things, which is their belief and their strategic goal of this great rejuvenation, which Xi kind of rolled out publicly in 2013. It's a continuation of the previous PLA leaders, but Xi broke with the hide and bide strategy that Deng brought in, and he feels confident enough to be able to do that. So they're working on that. And key to that great rejuvenation is maritime power. And Xi has been really the first paramount leader in the People's Republic of China's history that's really put so much energy and effort into the maritime theater, the theater that everybody here on this podcast is familiar with, the United States and the United States Navy. And so one way to measure how a nation's committed to those kind of things that they say that they're interested in is to see what they actually spend their money on. And you can see here just a little snapshot for the last 4 years, 2018 to 2022, that China's PLA growth in their defense budget has grown every year. 8% grew in this 2022 is 7.1%. And then you'll see up in the top right corner for 2023 that the growth of the PLA was announced in this what they call the two sessions of the National People's Congress in March. They said they'd grow it by 7.2%. And that's despite their overall GDP growth of the PRC being at 5%. So once again, a continuation of every year, the PLA growth in spending, they get more dollars or RMB than the rest of the country in terms of the growth of the budget. And that's been continuous for many, many years. And you'll see that right now it's estimated that for 2023, China will spend about $250 billion on its Defense Department. And we know that they don't claim everything like research and development, and they don't take into account purchasing power parity. So that number is much larger, and we'll see it reflected in things like this, which talk about, how many platforms the PRC is putting out each year and the cumulative total. As you can see here in this graphic, that over the last 22 years, China, really starting around 2010, really started to take off in the number of platforms, the battle force platforms that they built. And then this year in 2022, you'll see that they've produced 10 platforms. One Type 75 LHA, 3 Type 055 Bren high-class cruisers, 4 Luoyang 3 destroyers, 1 frigate, and then 1 Yuan SSP. 10 platforms, about 110,000 tons, which is a little bit less than they had last year when they commissioned 22 platforms. But again, it's still, even though it was smaller than 2022, it was still greater than anybody else in the region and around the world. So China is the #1 producer of warships and submarines on the planet, and has been so for over 5 years, or up to 5 years. I'd say we could challenge that a little bit more if we went out. But the point is made, China's putting out a large number of warships, and these are capable warships that enable China to achieve their goals and their dreams. I would point out that the 110,000 tons is roughly about 1/3 of the entire size of the French Navy, if you want a reference point. That in 1 year, China produced the size of 1/3 the size of the French Navy. And that's why you have people like Tom Schugert and CNAS that are continuing to estimate that the Chinese PLA Navy growth is going to continue to grow. And I think that's a good estimate. And you can see that reflected in this blue line on the graphic as we head out from 2023 into the out years. It continues to look like that's the priorities that the PRC and the Chinese Communist Party have for their budget. And we've seen that reflected in platforms like this, like their 3rd aircraft carrier, the Fujian, which we talked about last time. That was launched last June. And here they are by April of this year, already out and about doing power and mooring drills. And we would expect to see them out doing sea trials here, in the next couple of months, if not, who knows, maybe they're doing it right now. Probably not right now. But the estimate is that sometime this summer and the fall, they're going to be out doing their sea trials, and most likely they'll get a commissioning here in this year, which would give them 3 fully capable carriers, at least in terms of commissioning. The Shandong and Liaoning and Shandong, the first 2, are assessed to be operationally capable for the PLA at this point. And this graphic here, this is from the Chinese Global Times, but I think it just kind of puts into perspective there the 3 carriers that China has. And it's worth remembering that the Fujian was launched in June 17, 2022, but that's basically 10 years after the Liaoning, their first one, went to sea. So in the space of 10 years, they went from not having any aircraft carriers to having 3. and there's still estimates that the fourth platform is being constructed, or at least elements of it or modules of it are being put together in Zhangjiagang, which is near Shanghai, which would again maybe in 2024 we would start to see something more tangible about the fourth carrier.
Hey, Jim, just a question, if I could, on the Fujian.
Sure.
If I remember right, that's 80,000 ton roughly, so a little smaller than the U.S. Nimitz class carriers, but this one's indigenously designed, engineered, produced, and it's got electromagnetic catapults, and it's not a ski jump ramp like the other two are that were foreign designed, right? That were Ukrainian, Russian, and Soviet designed.
Yep, you hit them all. That's exactly right. This is a big deck carrier. It's on the order of the size of one of the first Nimitz class carriers, 80,000 tons, and it's really, we don't know how those EMALS or electromagnetic aircraft launch systems will work, but the fact that they installed them and that they're, I think they know that they're going to work, or they're going to go through the process of making them work, because they wouldn't want to have a system out there that's going to fail. They're very risk averse, I think, in that sense, that they bring things after they've already tested them in other areas and other settings. And so I think we're going to start to see something that's going to be very interesting, which gets to their carrier operations, which I think you can characterize since the end of December of 2021 through right now. We're starting to really see the Chinese Navy go to sea in the same way that the U.S. Navy carrier strike groups and expeditionary strike groups have long gone to sea. And the Chinese really started, I think you can call 2022 as the year where they really go to sea with their carrier force. And here's just a couple of a graphic or two that shows some of the deployments that they made in 2022, or December of 21 and then May of 2022 with Liaoning. There's some great stuff that Mike Dahm put out in your January issue, which I highly recommend everybody read. It's really, Mike's gone into this excruciating analysis and talks about all the facets of what we know, at least in the unclassified arena, about these carrier operations. But I think it's worth noting that they're operating in the blue water just like our carriers did. Just like when I was on the Kitty Hawk coming out of Tokyo, One, and we would go down and operate east of Okinawa much in the same way that the Chinese have done this last year. Now, it's not the same as us in terms of flight numbers of platforms that they're putting up, numbers of sorties, but it's again, as you mentioned, they're ski jump platforms, so they're not going to be able to put that many sorties up. But the idea is that they've presented a new threat vector in Taiwan that I don't think most people 10 years ago would have actually thought could have actually materialized this fast. And then we had this year, this is from December of 22, and you can see this time the carrier again going out and operating well to the east of Taiwan, and actually real close to Guam. So this is the Liaoning again. She was out operating, you can see close up north towards Honshu and then down towards Guam. But these are really sustained blue water operations. They're not out there for multiple weeks, but they're out there for a couple of weeks. They're flying, they're operating, and they're learning. And I think this is really the key. And for their own kind of self-protection, they're operating under a strategic rocket force kind of umbrella. So they know that wherever they're operating inside the second island chain, that they're going to have kind of their own, strategic rocket force backing them up and making sure that in addition to whatever they could put out from the strike group, whether it's from an anti-ship cruise missile from the Ren high-class cruiser or whatever the carrier aircraft have launched, they know that they're going to get DF-21Bs and DF-26s, and then, air-launched aircraft providing air-launched missiles as well. Here's just one picture just showing the Liaoning out as she was in the Western Pacific there, operating last December. You can see one of the J-15s launching off the ski ramp, and in the background, you'll see that's a Japanese platform that's out there as they're shadowing and watching. And so I was really happy to see that. It's a good reminder to us that we're operating out there as well. And so there's things that we're learning. We may not get to read about it in the newspaper or in the proceedings per se, but it's good to know that our 7th fleet is out there watching. In addition to the aircraft carriers, the Chinese have done a remarkable job when it comes to their amphibious vessels. And so what you see here is the 3rd Type 075 that was launched or commissioned last October, and here it is a month later, and it's out doing training and training evolutions just a month after it was commissioned. And this is about a 45,000-ton platform equivalent to our San Antonio class, and they have produced 3 of those basically in the last 18 months. So they've commissioned one about every 6 months. So it's pretty remarkable how quickly they're putting these big decks out into the water. Again, to be coordinating and operating together at sea with cruisers and destroyers as part of their emerging expeditionary strike group. Here's a picture of 2 of the first 2 Type 075s, amphibious assault ships. The Hainan and the Guangxi are out operating, doing training together earlier in 2022, late 2022. And then I put a little bullet down there, highlight box at the bottom. In the last 3 years, since 2020 to 2023, the Chinese produced 3 of these LHAs, 075s, and 2 Type 071 LPDs, and those are 25,000 tons. So they put in a lot of iron in the water for the amphibious side of the house. And in the same space of time, we've only produced 1 San Antonio class platform to Fort Lauderdale, and we lost the Bonhomme Richard. So we kind of broke even in 3 years, and they put up 5 platforms. So that kind of, for me, is kind of emblematic of the disparity that we've had over the last decade in terms of ship production and where we're at, and it's not a good trend line.
At Spectrum, we believe every day unlocks unlimited possibilities. Spectrum transforms your gaming experience into a galaxy of adventures, and with super reliable internet speeds.
Jim, I think you said a minute ago that the Type 075 was equivalent to San Antonio, but I think you meant a Ross class or American class, whereas the other one, the smaller one, is equivalent to the LPD, our LPD, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yep, very well understood.
Yeah, it's pretty frightening, the little Navy. They got the nuclear program, they got their missile production getting all crazy. Their Navy's friggin' nuts.
Here's the 30-second lesson on what legends know. Never ask a bride why she's getting married. Don't wear a skirt on a windy day. Deodorant is not a shower. Don't sniff chili flakes. And don't forget, saving is not investing. Legends don't just save, they invest in mutual funds. Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all.
Soft-spoken Benedict Gardner, but to give up their feet.
The U.S. Treasury Department says Chinese hackers gave access to its computers in a state-sponsored cyber attack. In a letter to Congress, Treasury officials revealed that the breach happened earlier this month when hackers exploited third-party software to infiltrate several workstations. China has denied any involvement in the attack and says it opposes all forms of hacking.
We've stated our position many times regarding such groundless accusations that lack evidence. China has always opposed all forms of hacker attacks, and we're even more opposed to the spread of false information against China for political purposes.
Let's get more on this with Ryan Kellenberg, who is Chief Strategy Officer at Proofpoint, a U.S.-based cybersecurity company. He joins us now from Silicon Valley in California. Ryan, in simple terms, how did the hackers do this, and what data were they able to steal?
So the simplest way I can explain it is that a large organization like the Treasury Department is going to have to manage thousands of computers. And it's going to have to do that remotely because you can't simply walk down the hall and get an IT person to help you anymore. In order to do that, they have specialized software that does what we call privileged access management. And the entire point of that software existing, in fact, is to prevent that very, very powerful account from being abused or in the hands of attackers. Unfortunately, a vulnerability in the design of this particular tool did exactly the opposite. And that vulnerability has been fixed, but unfortunately delivered access to the Treasury Department to the Chinese threat actor.
Now, officials of the U.S. Treasury Department are describing this breach as a, quote, major incident. Some security experts are speaking in almost apocalyptic terms about how bad this breach is. Is it that bad?
I wouldn't say it is. Honestly, this is part of a long pattern. Chinese threat actors have gone after cybersecurity products for a very long time, and they've also done what we call supply chain attacks. Compromising the Treasury directly can be a little bit challenging, but compromising one of the 100 or so cybersecurity vendors or thousands of IT vendors that the Treasury Department uses is pretty straightforward. In this case, also, the only reference is to the theft of documents, which, of course, are politically sensitive. The Treasury Department does handle fiscal policy. They do control things like the IRS that has a huge amount of sensitive information, but there's a specific reference to that being unclassified, so I wouldn't say that this is quite the apocalypse.
And any surprise that, if true, it was China-backed hackers who were able to do this?
No surprise whatsoever. This is a long-standing pattern of compromising sensitive access, especially ahead of large political events like the transition of administration. And of course, China always responds in exactly the same way. They deny any involvement. They condemn the entire notion of hacking as if they would never do that, even when, somewhat ironically, this is pretty straightforward espionage, which is more or less within the rules of the game. This is actually quite distinct from some other recent Chinese activity that does depart from international norms, like the attacks on U.S. critical infrastructure and even the attacks on U.S. telcos that were used to then spy on conversations.
China, of course, as you say, denies all of this. Is there any chance that it's not China in this case?
Well, there's always a theoretical chance. I will say I have investigated attacks where one threat actor was very much trying to appear as if they were another one. That is technically possible to do. I would say the odds of it happening in this particular case, though, are extremely remote because this is exactly the sort of thing that China has been doing. A lot of the same infrastructure we've seen them leverage in the past was used. And this is the type of supply chain attack, again, which they have gotten extremely good at. And so every arrow here points to China, and I would not be surprised if we do see other victims come forward because this remote support tool could be used to, again, do basically anything. So it's a perfect target for a nation-aligned threat actor like we saw in this case.
And do you think that the U.S. government is generally prepared enough for this kind of incursion?
Unfortunately, this is one of the hardest problems to solve in all of cybersecurity, because if you think about it from the Treasury Department's perspective, they're not just on the hook for securing their own systems. They're now also on the hook for all of these different third parties whose security teams they do not control, whose infrastructure they might not know very much about, because a lot of this software is delivered from the cloud, which is really just a data center outside the Treasury. And in fact, in a case like this one, these types of supply chain attacks are very difficult to both detect as well as to prevent. So I do think actually this is one of the bigger vulnerabilities that the U.S. government is going to struggle with.
Cybersecurity expert Ryan Kellenberg, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Melissa.
Snap your W-2 and file your taxes 100% free. Plus, get your biggest refund. File free now. Roughly 37% of filers qualify. Simple Form 1040 returns only. Click for eligibility.
all of us are artists in a certain way. Style, better.
Yeah, pretty crazy. Whoa. I don't know. We need to step up our game.